Ye thought I lost it. Ye thought I lost it. We all join Toastmasters for different reasons. Mine was to beat the fear and terror of what it feels like for some of us to stand up here in front of an audience and speak. Now, fellow Toastmasters, I'm going to take you on a journey of my time in Toastmasters over the last 6 years. And I hope that some of you, especially the newer members, will learn from some of the mistakes that I made along the way. I've learned a lot of things in the last 6 years, and my latest obsession is actually gestures and body language. Now I noticed, and I notice now, that when I came into the room first, before we started, and especially before the topic started, a lot of you had your arms folded. Now this is known as a negative defensive gesture. What it's saying, Liam, I'm looking at you, is don't ask me anything. Don't ask me anything. Now also, body language, it's an art in itself. And it's something that is very difficult to change. It's something that is very difficult. It's habits we have, and they're very difficult. They're ingrained in us, and they're very difficult to change. I'll give you an example. I want you all to fold your arms. Fold your arms. Now, 7 out of 10 people will fold their arms from left to right. 7 out of 10 will fold their arms from left to right. That's ingrained in us. Now, I want you to fold them the other way.
This way, this way.
Right, left.
No, this way.
But this is my theory. It's ingrained in us, so it's very difficult for us to change our body habits. Very difficult. My first meeting with Toastmasters. 6 years ago, I met Liam Friel in the showers in Hotel Westport. Not like that, now we're having a swim.
Okay.
And I asked him about Toastmasters. He said, you have to come along. I can't explain it. Now, probably if Liam had explained to me that day what Toastmasters was about, I wouldn't be here tonight. But along I came. The day before, I met my friend Rita. I said, Rita, will you come along to Toastmasters? I will never forget the terror and fear I saw on her face. She said, I would rather walk up nude to the top of the church at 12:10 with Pádraig Flynn rather than speak. And she said, furthermore, I cannot understand how anybody can put themselves to the torture of putting together a speech, learning it, and standing up and reciting it. Anyway, I arrived at the meeting on the following Monday night, the back seat, and I remember thinking, maybe Rita was right. But I progressed, and then my first speech was the icebreaker. It was the most difficult speech I ever had to give. And the reason was, after writing and rewriting it 100 times, I decided 3 days before the meeting to learn it off and to learn and time it. 24 minutes and 15 seconds.
Oh, that's a long time.
I had to lose 3/4 of my speech and still make it sound interesting. Now, I managed it, but it was the best lesson I ever learned in Toastmasters. A quote from Mark Twain put it very well. He got a telegram from his author. Need 2-day short story in 2 days. Twain replied, no. Can do 30 pages in 2 days, need 30 days to do 2 pages. I didn't feel so bad after that. Speeches 2 and 3 complemented one another. Organise your speech and get to the point. In 2, I spoke further about my life and organised it very well. My speech, that is, not my life. In 3, get to the point, I spoke about the reforms and changes I'd like to see in the urban councils and local councils. And somebody must have been listening, because at the end of this year, it's all going to happen. 4, speech 4, this was an eye-opener for me. Absolute eye-opener. The criteria for the speech was to eliminate jargon, to speak in everyday language, and to write for the ear. My speech was on great characters I knew growing up. Fellas like Willie Woodbine. He was a great character, a lovely old devil, a harmless old soul. But after a few pints in Johnny Morden's, he always started taking off his clothes. And a few pints, he started taking off his clothes. And the barman would always gently usher him to the door. And he would always be heard shouting, every single week he'd do it. He'd be handed, he'd always be heard shouting. He'd turn around and he'd say, "This is the dirtiest kip I was ever in. It's the only pub in this town where you have to clean your shoes on the way out." The problem with this speech was, on paper it was brilliant. But when I delivered it, I hadn't written it for the ear. I should have listened to Dolores. Read the manual. 5, your body speaks.
Oh God.
This was a speech where I decided to come out from behind the podium and face the audience. It was difficult, but I managed it. It was probably my favourite speech. And I remember directly when I remember coming out from behind the podium and I had my notes with me. And I was so thrilled with myself. I decided, I felt like Jesus, I could walk on water. I threw my notes on the ground. And then I realised it. The greatest speech I had ever written was down there. Down there. But I got through it. 6 and 7, I got through with relative ease. In 7, research your topic. I spoke about my granduncle Joe Ring, who was on the side of what side is that? Michael Collins. On Michael Collins' side, and I remember it was a beautiful speech. I brought along my good friend that night, Pat Duffy, who I had forgotten was on the other side. He was on the De Valera side, and you know we all they went with that. But the greatest compliment he could pay me afterwards was he said, "Jesus, Joe," he said, halfway through that speech, he said, I felt like jumping up and putting on the uniform. I felt my night was made. Speech 8, I wasn't listening to Dolores again. Speech 8. My speech was on Westport's second language. It was called Covispec. And it was a language that was evolved in the 50s, 60s and 70s and was actually used quite regularly. And I'll give you an example from it. A hookah. Look at the sham on the left hammer, wheezing the donor for the bruising. Now what that means is, translation it means, look at the gentleman on the left hand side, talking to the young lady and asking her out for dinner.
Wow.
The mistake I made in 8 was, I wasn't comfortable with visual aids, and I brought along a CD tape. I didn't need it at all, but I wasn't comfortable, so I used it. What happened, poor old Joe, on the night? The CD tape broke down. I was left here 12 minutes, 15 seconds from my speech that night. We'll never forget it. But if I knew then what I know now, I would have used images or pictures. And I'd have used maybe images of a poor old dog, and I'd spoken to you about maybe cruelty to animals. And I'd have you in tears within 2 minutes. I'd tell you about my little daughter and myself who went down the Greenway and found this poor little dog wandering around, abused. And how we took him home and looked after him, nurtured him back to and this would be the result of the dog.
Well, the dog's lovely.
And that would probably be the easiest speech I would ever have written. You'd have loved it, I'd have loved it, we all would have won. But if a picture paints 1,000 words, what do you make of this one?
Oh God, France.
The men in the audience are thinking,
Wow.
she has a nice one.
She's a lovely one.
The women are thinking, it'll be down to her ankles when she's 40.
Oh
I
God.
don't know what the photographer is thinking, but what I was thinking was, for my next speech, I'm going to write about the country that allows dogs to drive taxis.
I love the taxi. He's driving it.
I gave up speaking after that because I took on the role as president. And I have to say, it was the greatest honour I ever had. And a year I really enjoyed. And I sometimes get emotional about it because it was great. It was my favourite year of all my life. Anyway, further on in the year, Fiona and myself, fair play to her, took on the leadership role in the schools. And it was the most successful thing we ever did, Fiona. I mean, even I get emotional about that as well because it was brilliant. Darren gave us a hand, and Etna, as you can see, came up for one day for the pictures. We're still doing it. 3 years on, we have rewritten it. We have actually rewritten the whole course because it was a bit Americanized. We have it down, we call it Paddy Speak. It's absolutely wonderful. And we now teach it 5th class, 6th class, right through to Leaving Cert. I got back to the speeches again in 9, and it was Persuade with Power. I did it on music. And I thought it was a great speech. The speech was on what the world would be like without music. And it was a great speech, but on good evaluation, which is so important in any club, I was told I didn't nail it. And I didn't. And it was the second greatest lesson I ever learned. I thought I had done it to the best of my ability, but it just wasn't good enough. Second lesson I've ever learned. If I was to give advice, especially to newer members, it would be this. 3 bits. 1, read the manual. Just think of Dolores. Read the manual. Always read the manual. Read the objectives. 2, take on a mentor from 1 to 10, because the ones, we think we know it all, but we don't. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken on a mentor for the 10 of them. 3, the hardest night we ever have in Toastmasters is the day of the first night back. Because we're thinking, like Rita, why should we bother putting ourselves through the torture of all of this? And then we arrive in, and we get a topic, or we do an add-on, or we do a speech, and we get the buzz, we get the bug, and we're back. We're back and we're ready to go for another year. I have now reached the top of the ladder. I've hit my 10th speech, and I've hit the top of the ladder. But I've realised that there are many more ladders to climb, and many more manuals to take on. And there they are, and I intend to take them all on. And if I was, from now on until then, in every manual I'll ever take on, the next time, I will listen to Dolores.